Japanese Surface Fleet. Pacific Ocean. Late 1944. Night shortly after full darkness. The ocean should never feel still after a battle. Waves should carry wreckage outward. Smoke should drift. Engines, friendly or enemy, should still be moving somewhere beyond sight. Even silence usually has direction. This night did not. The Japanese surface fleet was already deployed when darkness settled completely. Ships moved in disciplined alignment, wakes cutting pale lines through black water. There was no moon overhead, no horizon to measure distance against. Only instruments, routine, and the expectation that if combat came, it would unfold in stages. The fleet was not fleeing. It was not charging. It was operating. Lookouts scanned the dark. Guns were manned but quiet. Fire control crews waited in a state that balanced readiness with restraint. This was late-war Pacific fighting, dangerous, yes, but familiar. Surprise was expected to come with warning. Engagements still had openings. That belief lasted seconds. Somewhere beyond vision, the battle had already begun. Targets were already fixed. Solutions already calculated. Corrections already queued. On the Japanese bridges, none of this was visible yet. No alarms sounded. No flares rose. There was no gradual tightening of tension, only routine motion sliding forward into something irreversible. The first impacts arrived without context. Shells struck with precision, so tight it felt synchronized. Multiple ships were hit almost simultaneously, close enough in time that crews could not tell which explosion belonged to which hull. Fire erupted instantly, bright and violent, then vanished back into darkness as smoke swallowed the light. The fleet reacted, but not together. Reports flooded radios, bearings conflicted, smoke erased reference points faster than they could be established. The enemy remained unseen, defined only by effect. Guns began to move, then hesitated. Fire control struggled to lock onto anything stable. The most unsettling moment came next. There was no maneuver. Ships did not accelerate. They did not turn away. They did not close distance. Not because orders forbade it, but because movement had already lost meaning. Precision gunfire walked across the formation faster than response could organize. Hits did not linger. As soon as one ship began to burn, fire shifted elsewhere. Damage control teams were overwhelmed before they could stabilize a single crisis. Then the firing stopped. Abruptly. No final salvo. No pursuit. No scattered exchanges. Just silence. Smoke hung low over the water. Flames burned where ships had been seconds earlier. The sea absorbed the shock and returned to stillness so complete it felt unnatural. Nothing moved. No engines. No wakes. No formations attempting to regroup. In 15 minutes, 16 ships had been erased, not driven off, not forced to withdraw, but removed so completely that the battlefield itself ceased to exist as a place of action. This was not a defeat that unfolded. It was an erasure. When the guns fell silent, there was nothing left to fight over, no coherent force to pursue, no direction to advance into. The ocean looked empty because it was empty of motion, of intent, of continuation. The battle did not end. It vanished. And that vanishing, the sudden absence of everything that had just existed, would become the defining memory of what happened next. Because in war, destruction usually leaves movement behind. This time it left nothing at all. The Japanese surface fleet had been organized around response, not pursuit. By the late war period, Doctrine emphasized discipline under pressure. Ships were expected to fight as a coordinated body, sharing information, overlapping fire, and correcting aim together as conditions changed. Precision mattered, but cohesion mattered more. The fleet's strength was supposed to come from collective reaction. That principle shaped the night's posture. Spacing was deliberate. close enough to communicate quickly, far enough on paper to maneuver if required. Fire control teams were alert, tracking bearings and preparing to adjust the moment contact was confirmed. Command assumed that if the enemy appeared, there would be a brief opening, seconds at least, where response could be synchronized. That opening never appeared. Late-war naval combat had changed the meaning of first contact. Detection no longer produced a pause, it produced execution. The moment targets were fixed, gunfire followed, already corrected, already sequenced. From within the Japanese formation, this shift was impossible to perceive in advance. Crews waited for the familiar cues, distant flashes, ringing shots, the sense of escalation that told them where to turn and when to fire. Instead, they received impact, not one ship at a time, but several, so close together that response collapsed into confusion. The fleet attempted to do what it had been built to do. Reports were sent, bearings were requested, fire control sought stable targets, guns began to traverse, the machinery of response engaged fully, but without the time it required to matter. Precision, gunfire exploited that gap. Hits landed where response lived. Bridges, control spaces, power systems, even ships not struck directly felt the effect as smoke and fire erased reference points. The formation's cohesion, designed to enable rapid correction, now spread disorientation. This is where Doctrine inverted. The fleet's strength, shared reaction, depended on shared timing. When timing disappeared, cohesion became inertia. Ships waited for confirmation that could not arrive. Independent action felt dangerous in close proximity. Firing blindly risked friendly damage. Maneuvering without orders risked collision. So movement slowed. Not by command, by caution. That hesitation was fatal. The attackers did not pause to confirm results. They shifted targets immediately, walking fire across the formation faster than any coordinated response could form. The Japanese fleet was not overwhelmed by volume alone. It was outpaced by tempo. Within minutes, multiple ships were burning simultaneously. Damage control teams faced too many crises at once. Fire control systems lost power before they could stabilize. Command signals continued, but each instruction addressed a situation that had already changed. The fleet had been built to respond together. What it faced required instant, decentralized action. That mismatch defined the next 15 minutes. Because once response fell behind destruction, nothing the fleet did afterward could catch up. The destruction did not come from weight alone. It came from sequencing. The opening fire did not linger on a single target long enough to invite recovery. As soon as a ship was hit and began to burn, the guns shifted. Not randomly, not emotionally, methodically. Each salvo landed where it would interrupt function, then moved on before damage control could stabilize anything. This was the critical difference. In earlier naval battles, a ship might absorb hits and still fight on. Damage control mattered because time existed between impacts. Fires could be isolated, power could be rerouted, command could reassert control after shock. Here, time was denied. Precision gunnery exploited the narrow window between damage and recovery. Fire control teams on the attacking side adjusted aim rapidly, switching targets while previous hits were still unfolding. The result was a cascading effect, multiple ships entering crisis simultaneously, none allowed to recover before the next wave of fire arrived elsewhere. For the Japanese fleet, this created paralysis. Damage control teams were overwhelmed not by severity, but by simultaneity. Every ship was fighting fires. Every ship was reporting failures. Command could not prioritize because everything was urgent at once. Fire control systems suffered the same fate. Even when guns remained intact, targeting data collapsed. Smoke, fire, and power loss erased reference points. Crews attempted local solutions, manual aiming, visual tracking, but the enemy did not remain visible long enough to engage effectively. The precision was relentless. Hits landed on bridges, severing command, on fire control stations, blinding response, on machinery spaces, removing movement entirely. Ships that might have maneuvered out of danger were reduced to stationary targets within minutes. This is why movement stopped. Not because engines all failed at once, but because maneuver ceased to offer advantage, turning exposed fresh surfaces to fire, accelerating drew attention without escape, slowing changed nothing. Every option felt equally futile. The fleet did not freeze. It exhausted its options. One by one, ships entered states of partial function, still afloat, still burning, still alive, but no longer able to influence the battle. These ships were not immediately sunk, they were neutralized. That distinction mattered. Neutralized ships cluttered the battle space. Smoke spread, fires illuminated hulls unpredictably. The formation became a patchwork of burning silhouettes and dead water, offering no clear axis for action. Command signals continued. They asked for reports that could not be completed. They issued instructions that could not be followed. Each message arrived into an environment already changed by the last salvo. The engagement had crossed a point where control no longer scaled. Precision had removed elasticity. There was no give left in the system. Every hit reduced not just capability, but possibility. This is why, when the firing stopped, nothing moved. The fleet had not been pushed back. It had been rendered inert. 16 ships were still present in some form, burning, sinking, drifting, but none retained the ability to act collectively. The battle did not resolve into pursuit or retreat. It resolved into stillness. Because precision gunnery had not just destroyed ships. It had erased the conditions required for motion to matter. The next 15 minutes did not feel like combat. They felt like continuation without choice. After the first wave of precision fire, the Japanese surface fleet attempted to stabilize. Crews fought fires, rerouted power, and tried to re-establish internal communication. Officers shouted for bearings and confirmations that never aligned. Radios carried overlapping reports, each describing a different emergency, each demanding immediate action. What never appeared was an opening. Every attempt to regain control was overtaken by another impact somewhere else. The pattern repeated relentlessly. A ship entered crisis, command shifted attention, and before any resolution could occur, a new crisis emerged elsewhere in the formation. This destroyed prioritization. Command could not decide which ship to save first because none could be saved in isolation. Damage was not sequential, it was concurrent. The fleet was being dismantled horizontally, not vertically. Movement ceased to be useful. Ships that still had engines hesitated to maneuver because every turn exposed another surface to fire. Acceleration only made a vessel more visible against burning neighbors. Slowing changed nothing. The sea offered no direction of safety. The formation began to dissolve, not through order, but through necessity. Some ships drifted as power failed. Others remained dead in the water, burning steadily. A few attempted limited course changes, only to stop again when smoke erased all reference points. The fleet did not retreat or advance. It stalled. The attackers exploited this fully. Fire shifted rapidly across the immobilized formation, correcting aim with each impact. There was no pause to assess, no curiosity about results. Ships already burning were ignored in favor of those still capable of action, even if that capability lasted only seconds more. This was not cruelty. It was efficiency. The Japanese fleet's greatest vulnerability was now its density. Smoke spread laterally, fires illuminated hulls unevenly, creating momentary targets that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. Each flash drew fire, each fire drew more. By the 10th minute, the battle no longer had a front. It had a field of damage. By the 15th, it had no direction at all. 16 ships were either sinking, burning beyond control, or drifting without power. Guns were silent, not because ammunition was gone, but because firing no longer changed outcomes. Fire control systems had nothing stable to work with. When the last salvos fell, there was no response. Not delayed. Not scattered. None. The silence that followed was complete, not the tense silence of anticipation, but the hollow silence of conclusion. The battle had not been won in a decisive maneuver or dramatic exchange. It had been ended by removing every option simultaneously. When the guns stopped, nothing moved because there was nothing left that could. By the midpoint of the engagement, the attackers no longer evaluated targets the way Doctrine described. They did not ask which ships were threatening. They asked which ships still mattered. A ship on fire but drifting was ignored. A ship with engines but no coordination was ignored. Attention focused on the few hulls that still showed signs of agency, power fluctuations, gun flashes, attempts at maneuver. Those ships were eliminated first. This was not escalation. It was filtration. Each salvo reduced the pool of meaningful targets. Precision fire did not chase destruction for its own sake. It removed function. Once function vanished, fire moved on. From inside the Japanese fleet, this created a strange perception. Ships that were still afloat felt abandoned, not by command, but by the enemy. The absence of incoming fire did not signal safety. It signaled irrelevance. Crews realized that being ignored meant they had already been neutralized. That realization changed behavior. Damage control teams shifted from restoration to containment. Guns fell silent not because ammunition was gone, but because firing no longer changed attention. Maneuver was attempted less frequently because it no longer produced advantage. The battlefield was thinning, not through retreat, but through disqualification. This is why the engagement accelerated instead of dragging on. Every minute reduced the number of ships that required attention. Every reduction made the next decision faster. By the time half the fleet was burning, the outcome had already condensed into inevitability. The battle was not won by overwhelming all targets at once. It was won by making most of them stop counting. For the crews, the most disorienting moment came after the firing slowed. Not because danger was gone, but because purpose was. Men fought fires that no longer affected the battle. They patched systems that could not rejoin anything. Radios carried fragments of speech that never assembled into orders. The fleet still existed physically, but its reason for existing had dissolved. This created a quiet panic. Not shouting. Not disorder. Uncertainty. Officers searched for direction to give and found none that mattered. Sailors asked what came next and received silence. The absence of movement outside mirrored the absence of intent inside. Some ships attempted to regroup. They could not find one another. Smoke blocked vision. Power failures erased navigation aids. The formation that had once provided identity no longer existed as a reference. Each ship became a solitary object in black water. This isolation was final. Without coordination, without targets, without orders that could change outcomes, crews shifted inward. Survival replaced participation. The fight had moved past them. This is why nothing moved afterward. Movement implies intention. Intention implies agency. The fleet had lost both. By the midpoint of the engagement, the attackers no longer evaluated targets the way Doctrine described. They did not ask which ships were threatening. They asked which ships still mattered. A ship on fire but drifting was ignored. A ship with engines but no coordination was ignored. Attention focused on the few hulls that still showed signs of agency, power fluctuations, gun flashes, attempts at maneuver. Those ships were eliminated first. This was not escalation. It was filtration. Each salvo reduced the pool of meaningful targets. Precision fire did not chase destruction for its own sake. It removed function. Once function vanished, fire moved on. From inside the Japanese fleet, this created a strange perception. Ships that were still afloat felt abandoned, not by command, but by the enemy. The absence of incoming fire did not signal safety, it signaled irrelevance. Crews realized that being ignored meant they had already been neutralized. That realization changed behavior. Damage control teams shifted from restoration to containment. Guns fell silent not because ammunition was gone, but because firing no longer changed attention. Maneuver was attempted less frequently because it no longer produced advantage. The battlefield was thinning, not through retreat, but through disqualification. This is why the engagement accelerated instead of dragging on. Every minute reduced the number of ships that required attention. Every reduction made the next decision faster. By the time half the fleet was burning, the outcome had already condensed into inevitability. The battle was not won by overwhelming all targets at once. It was won by making most of them stop counting. For the crews, the most disorienting moment came after the firing slowed. Not because danger was gone, but because purpose was. Men fought fires that no longer affected the battle. They patched systems that could not rejoin anything. Radios carried fragments of speech that never assembled into orders. The fleet still existed physically, but its reason for existing had dissolved. This created a quiet panic. Not shouting, not disorder, uncertainty. Officers searched for direction to give and found none that mattered. Sailors asked what came next and received silence. The absence of movement outside mirrored the absence of intent inside. Some ships attempted to regroup. They could not find one another. Smoke blocked vision. Power failures erased navigation aids. The formation that had once provided identity no longer existed as a reference. Each ship became a solitary object in black water. This isolation was final. Without coordination, without targets, without orders that could change outcomes, crews shifted inward. Survival replaced participation. The fight had moved past them. This is why nothing moved afterward. Movement implies intention. Intention implies agency. The fleet had lost both. Movement after battle usually means continuation. Retreat, pursuit, reorganization. Here there was none. The precision and tempo of the engagement had removed continuation itself. There was nothing left to exploit, nothing left to respond to. Motion would not change position or outcome. This is why the stillness mattered. It marked a new kind of conclusion, one where victory did not need confirmation. The absence of response was the confirmation. Nothing moved because nothing remained unfinished. This battle is remembered for what followed it. Nothing. 16 ships were lost in 15 minutes, not in a climactic exchange, but in a process that removed every option at once. Precision gunnery did not overwhelm resistance, it erased the need for it. When firing stopped, the sea did not wait for the next phase. There was no next phase. The battlefield ceased to exist because there was nothing left that could act upon it. In late-war naval combat, speed no longer decided who fired first. It decided who still mattered. And in those 15 minutes, the Japanese surface fleet was reduced from a force into objects, present, burning, drifting, but no longer part of a fight. That is why nothing moved afterward. Because movement belongs to battles that continue. This one did not.